All right, picture this. It's 2:32 a.m., dead of night in the Strait of Hormuz. You're staring at a radar screen on the USS Tripoli. A single red dot blinks into existence, and then it's gone. A few seconds later, it's back, but it's not alone. It's doubled, tripled, until a whole swarm of targets is screaming right for the American fleet.
But here's the kicker. That swarm? It wasn't real. Not a single missile was actually in the air. And yet, the threat it represented was absolutely catastrophic. Welcome to the new reality of naval warfare, where the real battle isn't always fought with missiles, but with information.
Because in these dangerous waters, what you see is almost never what you get. The deadliest attacks are the ones you can't see coming, fought on an invisible battlefield, where light and sound themselves can be turned into weapons.
So, to really get a grip on this, let's head back to that night in the Strait. The star of the show for the US here is the USS Tripoli Strike Group. We're talking about a massive symbol of raw, conventional military power.
I mean, this is what naval power looks like, right? You got the Tripoli itself, just loaded with Marines and those F-35B stealth fighters. It's got a whole security detail of advanced destroyers running the Aegis combat system. You know, that super smart radar and missile network? Below the waves, a silent Virginia-class submarine is its shadow. And above, Seahawk helicopters are scanning for any threats. On paper, this thing is an impenetrable fortress of steel. But Iran's move, which they call Operation True Promise 4, it doesn't kick off with a missile launch. Nope, it starts with the scream of electronic noise. High-power jammers just flood the airwaves, painting the radar screens of the US fleet with phantom attackers. They're literally creating an army of electronic ghosts.
And this is where we get to the very first layer of modern warfare. Before a single kinetic shot is ever fired, there's an all-out war for the electromagnetic spectrum. It's a fight to control what your enemy can see, what they can hear, and ultimately, what they think.
This really gets to the heart of the deception. The operators on those destroyers, they see a wall of incoming missiles. A classic saturation strike meant to overwhelm their defenses. But the real threat? It's a cloud of bad data. It's phantom targets designed to do one thing: make them hesitate, make them second guess, maybe even get them to fire on a friendly or waste their multi-million-dollar interceptors on, well, nothing. The goal isn't just to sink a ship, it's to paralyze the human minds in charge. So how in the world do they pull this off? Well, the key piece of tech here is something called digital radio frequency memory, or DRFM for short. The easiest way to think about it is like a magic trick for radar. A DRFM system literally catches an enemy's radar pulse, messes with it in real time, and then sends back a doctored version. It can make one lone jet look like an entire squadron, or it can create ghosts that just teleport across the screen, making it completely impossible to tell what's real and what isn't. But, of course, there's a countermove. While Iran is busy flooding the sky with all this jamming noise, US EA-18G Growler jets are flying in what they call cold mode. They're not transmitting anything. They're just silently listening and recording every single frequency. And in this invisible fight, Iran's greatest weapon just became its biggest weakness. Each one of those jammers is now screaming its location like a giant beacon. That's when the Growlers go hot, unleashing targeted beams of energy and special missiles that literally ride those jamming signals right back to the source, and poof, the enemy's network goes dark. Okay, so that's the battle for the airwaves. But that's only half the story. While all this electronic chaos is happening up top, another, even quieter and arguably more terrifying conflict is playing out hundreds of feet below the surface.
Down there, lurking on the seafloor, are Iran's Ghadir-class mini-subs. They call them black holes because they're so acoustically stealthy. These things have been sitting perfectly still for hours, engines cold, just blending into the noise of the ocean floor.
To the fleet's powerful active sonar, they might as well be invisible. They're just not there. They are true ghosts in the water, waiting for the perfect moment to strike from inside the fleet's own defensive perimeter. But the US isn't just listening from the ships on the surface. They've seeded the whole area with autonomous underwater drones. Think of them as a network of floating ears, just passively listening for anything that doesn't belong. And then, they hear it. A sharp, cold, metallic clank. It's the one sound a submariner never wants anyone else to hear. It's the unmistakable acoustic signature of a torpedo tube door opening. In that single, tiny moment, the invisible killer gives away everything. And just like that, the silent hunt is on.
So, okay, we've seen how the US can handle these invisible threats in the air and under the sea. But
What happens when the real battlefield isn't a physical place at all? What happens when it's the global story, the narrative?
Let's switch gears and look at a different scenario. US intelligence gets a hot tip. A Chinese freighter, the Jianhua 28, is making a beeline for Iran, and the suspected cargo? YJ-18s. These are advanced anti-ship cruise missiles, the kind of weapon that could turn the entire Strait of Hormuz into a death trap. The mission is simple: stop that ship, no matter what.
And this is where China plays a brilliant game of 4D chess. First, after a really tense standoff with a Chinese warship, the US Navy disables the freighter with a couple of SM-6 missiles. It looks like a clean tactical win. But when the American boarding team storms the ship, there are no missiles. All they find are crates of medical supplies. It was a complete setup. The moment this happens, China floods the internet with drone footage of the attack, framing the US Navy as pirates attacking a humanitarian aid mission. And with the world watching, Beijing uses this as the perfect excuse to announce a permanent naval deployment to the Gulf. And oh yeah, they also ink a 99-year lease for a military base in Iran. China just sacrificed a pawn to take the queen.
This just lays it all out, doesn't it? It's the new rule of engagement. The US absolutely won the physical fight. They owned the night with better tech, better training. But it didn't matter, because China won the information war. They owned the narrative. And by doing that, they walked away with a huge geopolitical win.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, these scenarios show us that the very nature of war is changing right under our feet. The old rules, who has the biggest ships, the most missiles, they're being completely rewritten. The new game is all about data, deception, and perception. This is basically the new playbook for the 21st century. First, information is the new firepower. It's not about how many missiles you have, but how quickly you can process data. Second, deception is now the ultimate weapon, and its target isn't the hardware, it's the human mind making the decisions. Third, the battlefield is everywhere at once. It's in the air, under the sea, in cyberspace, and all over your social media feed. And that leads to the final point. Victory doesn't go to the strongest anymore. It goes to the side that can adapt the fastest.
And all of this leaves us with one final, pretty unsettling thought. It doesn't matter if it's a swarm of phantom missiles, a silent submarine, or a freighter that's not what it seems. The real threat is never what it appears to be. In this new era of warfare, the most dangerous thing you can do is look exactly where your enemy wants you to look, because that's when they win the real battle, somewhere else entirely.